Hello and welcome to the Rogue Monkey podcast, the show that explores the journey of successful people, shares the highs and lows of the journey, and gives you some great insights into a whole range of career paths. We've reached the penultimate episode of Season 4, and we really are flying high after such an amazing response to last week's show, where we spoke to cancer survivor and fellow podcaster Ashton Marshall. Make sure you head back and check that one out if you've not done so already. If you're new to the show, we've got 31 episodes that are live for you to check out, spanning TV presenters, fighter pilots, Olympic champions and entrepreneurs. Please click subscribe and sign up to our free monthly community update that gives you exclusive insights to our guests, book reviews, some useful links, as well as a microblog from me, Kevin Pickard, talking about anything and everything from the world of disruptors and creative thinking. On to this week's show, and I'm super excited to welcome Kyle Sockwell, a former athlete who traversed the American college system and finished his career under one of the most successful coaches of all time, Bob Bowman. He shares with us his experiences of the sports journey, some of the hurdles he's overcome, and what it's like stepping away from being a full-time athlete and using the lessons from sport and taking them into the business world. So, let's get into episode 31 of the Rogue Monkey podcast, navigating the athlete journey and not knowing where it will lead. A conversation with Kyle Sockwell. Hello, Kyle. How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Doing pretty well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing some time with us today. Obviously, being a swimming fan myself, really excited to talk to you and hopefully explore your journey over the next kind of half hour or so. But if you can give our listeners just a bit of an insight into who you are and kind of your headline journey so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So most people, kind of my claim to fame in the swimming world is just my Twitter, and kind of where I just vent about the sport and try and keep things creative and fun. It is a sport where sometimes we need to remember to have fun and remember that it is a sport, because it can definitely feel like just exercise. But I mean, I started swimming when I was like 1 year old, still swim to this day. And we were talking, right before we started recording about how kind of the pandemic has made me realize like we should appreciate pool time a little bit more. So I think I might be getting back into some master swimming soon. But I ended up swimming at Arizona State for college, swam under Bob Bowman. And that was kind of the end of my career. It took a little bit of a break, and, I'm back in it now. I do a little bit of commentary on the side, but yeah, swimming's in my blood.
So if you can kind of share with us, and obviously from a swimming perspective, but a lot of sports in the US have got a very structured and well-organized system as you move through. So what was kind of your experience moving through, the school, college system? What's that actually like? Can you kind of share that with our listeners?
Yeah, definitely. You hit the nail on the head. It's structured. Everything in the US is very structured. You kind of end up going down a path, and you kind of have to make that decision pretty early on, just because of how competitive a lot of the sports are over here. You don't see a lot of people spilling over into different sports, which is why, a Bo Jackson or, a Michael Jordan playing baseball and football and track and football is kind of like an eye opener, just because you're so dedicated to that one channel, because you just have to be, with how many bodies are trying to compete and fight for, a very limited number of spots. I kind of made the commitment towards the end of middle school, which is 8th grade, around 14, 15 years old, where I was playing baseball and swimming, and just decided, hey, I'm kind of good at this swimming thing. I know how to train, and I'm probably going to end up being a 400 IMer. It's probably going to suck, but I might get a scholarship out of it. So I ended up kind of committing to that. And then throughout high school, grew into my body, at least I thought. And then, from there, went to George Mason University out in Virginia, ended up transferring to Arizona State, where I actually started to develop and drop times like I had never imagined possible. And then from there, ended up swimming for 4 years, and then kind of moving into more of a media and commentary role from there.
That's fantastic. I'm curious a little bit, because you talked about what you thought possible or didn't think was possible. reflecting back now, what kind of would your thoughts be if you were giving advice to yourself, 15, 16-year-olds that are thinking like they're almost at the end of their journey, there's not much ahead of them, and actually, should I give up?
Yeah, it's actually funny. The whole pandemic and, having to figure out how to, eat right and, hydrate well. Every single, there's kind of like blocks of time. Right after I stopped swimming, I was eating the same as when I was swimming. And you can probably tell where I'm going with this. It's nutrition. And I mean, I just kind of like blew up, and I was lifting heavy, and I just got like really big. I wasn't fat, but I was big. And it was like, I had been probably like 165 pounds. I don't know how many kilos that is, probably like 70, 71 or something around there.
Yep.
And I'd never really been any bigger than that. And I was just kind of like my niche. And I remember vividly, I had an issue like tying my shoe. I like bent over and I was like, I'm too big to like tie my shoe properly. Like, what's going on? And that was the moment in time where I actually started learning how to eat and fuel my body properly, which is just way later than most people. So looking back, I mean, to my 16-year-old self, I tell myself to start eating right, and start drinking water throughout the day, instead of like 4 Gatorades and a coffee. Because looking back, I mean, the fuel that I was putting in myself was definitely the biggest detriment to my success as a swimmer, like no doubt. The way that I eat now, I mean, it's just so much more apparent. If I eat, like a big steak and a buttload of fries and like drink half a glass of water throughout the day, my workout is just garbage. And I think the reason that I'm noticing that now is because no one can tell me that I have to keep going and just deal with it. If I go to the gym and I haven't eaten right and I haven't drank any water, I just get tired, pissed off, and want to go home. And I'll do that just because I don't have a coach now. So, I mean, from 16 to 19, I just ate really bad. And then in college, there is definitely an aspect of swimming where you need to, eat a lot, try and keep that weight on because it is such a high aerobic sport. But I mean, the one thing, I'm going to keep it at one specific thing, is just eat right and drink way more water. Didn't drink enough water for probably 5 years.
I find that fascinating. You mentioned that because I never obviously got to the level you did, but I remember doing a parachute jump about 2 years after stopping swimming properly. And they said, how much do you weigh? And I was kind of like, it would have probably been around 160, 170. And I was 200. And I was like, whoa, how did that? Because I hadn't weighed myself since I stopped swimming. And and a lot of that came down to I'd carried on eating exactly as I had, not been mindful of it. And I was chatting the other day with a few friends to say, if I went back and did it all again and I ate, just knowing what I know now, my swimming would have improved exponentially.
Yeah. And I mean, people, and the thing is, people told me, they were like, you need to eat right. You need to eat lean. You need to figure out like what nutrients you need throughout the day to be successful and have the most energy. And I was like, oh, whatever. Like, I need to keep weight on. I need to eat a double cheeseburger before I swim this 400 IM. And just the way that I looked at my body and, how it needed to be set up for success in the specific events that I swam was just wrong. So if I could take my 26-year-old mind and put it in my 20-year-old body, I think I would have been exponentially faster.
Well, we're going to bounce around a bit because there's a few things obviously want to unpick with you, but I'm curious about the transition. Obviously, you talked out of swimming into kind of the various roles you're doing now. What did that transition look like? Because one of the things that I feel like the sports or all sports don't do perhaps as well as they could, unless you're at that absolute elite end, is support that transition of someone who, especially in swimming, has had a highly structured, really committed lifestyle in a very niche area, and then go, you finished training, goodbye, and that's it. And then you're suddenly in this void of no man's land. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, it was hard. And anyone that tells you it's not either had a really easy path or is just lying to you. The real world, which is what it is, especially the transition of being like a college athlete, feeling like you're on top of the world, like everyone's looking at you all the time, which maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Is just a complete twist in your mind. Now you're working out to stay fit whatever that means. I lost track of goals. I had so many goals and I was so data oriented with, I need to go this specific time and these need to be my splits. I need to be, at this weight at this time, at this point in the year, to like, I just want to try and be kind of healthy. And that like different mindset and just the whole, like, I would call it kind of a confusion. And we kind of touched on it earlier, just kind of led to me, just blowing up. So I started kind of like powerlifting, not like full on. It was just kind of half-assed. And I mean, I ended up getting pretty strong, but didn't realize that that wasn't the body type that I wanted to be at. Some people enjoy that and they do it their whole life. For me, when I bent over and tried to tie my shoes and I was like, what, this isn't fun. I can barely reach my shoes. This is uncomfortable for me. Getting out of bed was difficult because I was holding 500 pounds on my back. And it took a good year and a half for me to go. And I mean, at the end of that kind of kick of powerlifting and like just wanting to get big and strong, I had to kind of sit down and go like, what do I want to be physically in life, to give myself the most energy and, I guess general happiness. And I'm kind of on that track right now where it's just get back into the aerobic capacity style of things. Cause I really enjoyed training. And it took me a while to kind of convince myself of that. So I'm doing a lot of spinning now and a lot of rowing and then mixing in some swimming when I want to, which is a really cool part of being done with swimming. Is you can have a workout written for you. And if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. You can do whatever you want, it sounds so simple. It's such a weird concept for someone post-collegiate or post-professional swimming. It's just not having a boss of your physicality. And so that's kind of a little glimpse into the physical side of things. I'm definitely still trying to figure it out. It's weird having been, in training, so structured, up at a specific time, falling asleep at a specific time to, just kind of my own boss. It's a weird transition. And I mean, like I said, I'm still trying to figure it out. I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. But professionally was weird as well. Like you mentioned, and I got pretty lucky. I have a lot of different things that I can do with, the media side of swimming. I do commentary, I do, some brand deals here and there. And then also, I mean, it's just kind of a nice little feather in the cap on a resume, to have as many Twitter followers as I have and, kind of the audience that I've created. So I kind of ended up falling into marketing straight out of school. I was actually running a retail company in college. It was kind of a swimming niche apparel company. And, so I thought I had a glimpse of what that would look like and, what the professional world would look like, but definitely didn't. It's a hard transition to make, and they tell you that. We had a lot of meetings in college with kind of like transitional speakers, and they were like, it's going to be a hard transition. Your brain's going to be confused. And I was like, whatever. Like, I can't wait to start working. I can't wait to start making money. I'm going to buy a boat, all this stuff. And then, you get out of school and you're like, not on your parents' dollar anymore. You're not getting scholarship money, food paid for, any of that stuff. And you're like, man, I have to pay for all of this stuff and it adds up to what? And I have to do this with like, just kind of a mind-blowing transition. And it's a lot to handle. Some people handle it really well. Some people don't. And I mean, it's fine. You can talk to, there's endless resources with this athlete transitional stuff that I wish I had taken more advantage of. But I'm definitely on a path right now where, I'm starting to realize like what it is I really like to do, and how I want to stay fit, and I'm eating right and I'm drinking more than half a glass of water a day. But at the same time, I'm 26. So, I graduated from school 4.5 years ago, and it took me this long to get to the point where I think I'm starting to figure it out, which is, it'll feel like it's something to be embarrassed of, when you're 22, 23. It's not. Everybody does it. And I mean, a lot of people got an earlier start. It's weird to think about because we're such high level athletes. But a lot of people that didn't, train as much as we did for as long as we did, started having to figure out how to eat right and maintain their body, to keep that capacity of energy as high as possible, when they're like 16 years old. And so their 4-year period ends at 20 when ours starts at around 22, and we're eating 10 sugar cookies and a bucket of fried chicken every night to keep weight on and still look good. And, I want to emphasize the look good side of things, because you can look good and not feel good and not be running at your capacity. If I ate 4 buckets of salad and it came out to the same amount of calories as a bucket of fried chicken, I'm going to swim at a much higher capacity than I would if I had just eaten a salad. And I mean, like I said, there's just kind of a lag. And so I think I'm starting to figure it out. I might still be wrong. But I mean, if I had to kind of loop it all together into one thing, it's just, don't think that other people aren't going through the same thing that you are. The transition's weird. The transition is hard. Just kind of go into it knowing that, and don't be afraid to ask people that have done it before.
Well, we're going to pick up on some of your current stuff in a bit, but something I'm more as the swimming geek in me has to ask, being in that training group under Bowman, and obviously you said it was kind of the back half of your career. What was there a time period where actually it almost felt surreal that you were in that bubble, your swimming career, maybe you hadn't even acknowledged it was coming to an end, but actually you were just in that moment, that last year, 2 years, where you had Phelps, coach, all of these things going on, and you were just like, this is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool. It was definitely weird. I kind of touched on it in another podcast, and I'll dive into it here. But like the transitioning coaches is always weird. And it's very structured in America. Like I've talked about, is you have a club coach, a high school coach, a college coach. Sometimes you go through a college coach transition. But when it's abrupt like that, it's going to be weird. And so we had our previous coach leave, and we had an interim coach, Dan Kessler, who was awesome, one of the most personable guys you'll ever meet, kind of help us in that transition. But as a college athlete, swimming is that's it for you. That's where your main focus is. They say student athlete, but it doesn't feel that way all the time. And I think it's kind of put on ourselves a lot. We look at ourselves as athlete students. And I mean, so it was really weird, and there was a lot of uncertainty. And then, we actually thought our coach was going to be someone different all the way up until Bob walked into the room. So we thought it was going to be one of the assistant coaches from USC, and then he ended up taking another role, and they went with Bob, which was just kind of mind blowing to us. And we kind of had to like keep our cool. And over the next 2 years, it was a weird transition from, being a kid that grew up in 2008, in the meat of my swimming career, watching, Phelps win 8 golds and seeing Bob on the screen over and over and over with a rolled up heat sheet, kind of like freaking out, cheering. And now he's like on a pool deck telling me what to do is weird. But easily the best coach I ever had. Just the way that he thinks about the whole year and looks at it from 10,000 feet, and then knows how to explain that to the team so that when a set shows up, you're not shocked. You know how your body's going to feel at certain points in the year, and you know why. It sounds simple, but it's huge. It was definitely surreal. The way my career ended, wasn't exactly how I had hoped. I ended up getting injured and redshirting for a year, and then came back, and just once you get injured, especially in the way that I did, I ended up dislocating my shoulder, breaking off a piece of the bone on the head of my, what's it called? Humerus, I think. Yep. Yeah. And then I had a small tear on my labrum, but it was really just everything is just kind of more stretched out. And I was subluxing a lot, which is a partial dislocation. And it was just kind of like I had learned how to swim a specific way and feel my body in a specific way for 21 years. And then everything was different now. I ended up just kind of foregoing my last year. And it was a great decision. And Bob kind of walked me through that decision all the way through. And I'm definitely thankful for it because, now I'm able to sleep on my arm without my shoulder hurting or feeling like it's going to pop out of socket. And, maybe I would have gone 1 second faster, maybe 10 seconds faster if I wasn't eating so much fried chicken. But it was a weird end to the career, but swimming under Bob for 2 years was definitely the icing on the cake for my 21 years of swimming.
Awesome. And just kind of fleshing out the actual team element there, because you mentioned, obviously, it's an incredible experience swimming in college. What is it that's so good about the whole team dynamic? That you talked about how the coaches play such a vital role in that. How does that all look, and what makes it so good? Because so many people who are not either involved in sport or have never seen kind of under the hood, I guess, of American sport, really struggle to understand why a swimming club in America is so different from a program in another part of the world, and actually systematically it's so much more exciting, engaging, and it's just such a cool place to be.
Yeah, it's awesome. If I had to rank, how fun swimming was throughout my career, college would be here, high school would be here, and then everything else would be off screen. And we kind of just have that aggressive team aspect of swimming driven into us starting around high school. Like high school sports in Texas specifically are insane. And it's just kind of like, I don't know if you've seen like high school football in Texas, but the high school football championship, I think the attendance at the game, well, obviously now it's COVID and everything's weird, but in like 2018 would have ranked like 11th in college football bowl games. So it's like you're in a college football bowl game and you're 17 years old. Some of those kids are 16. So that kind of like excitement around being with a group of people and doing a really cool thing in a huge stadium under the lights with people all around. Texas high school state swimming was the same way. It's just kind of instilled into you, just so early on. And so then you roll into college and you have that same mentality, and you have a group of people that all have that same mentality. It's intense. And so to kind of touch on it, it is interesting because the foreign guys on our team definitely were kind of like overwhelmed with how intense we all were about the team aspect of things. And it's just kind of like how our brains work. And so, I ended up getting voted captain my junior year, I think. It's kind of, I think 4 years ago now, which is crazy. So it's kind of all starting to blur a little bit. Like for the first time in my entire life, I forgot what my best time was in like the 400 IM the other day. Somebody asked me and I was like, I actually don't know. I had to go back and look it up. But I got voted captain, and, it was interesting because, our team was probably 25% foreign and 75% domestic, which is a weird way to talk about it because it sounds like we're ordering off a beer menu. But, it was interesting to see kind of that transition of like, wow, like I could care less what I go or where I place as long as our team wins. That transition of that mindset. And it's awesome to watch, from freshman year where it's kind of a lot about, my lane, what's happening to me, transition into, senior year, a lot of the foreign guys on our team just going nuts for our team, wearing, Arizona State gear when they're 30, tweeting about the team and, on Instagram, like blowing them up and stuff. That kind of like watching the transition of, yeah, this is my team, it's going to be my team for life. It's pretty cool. Cause it is just instilled into us from when we're like playing T-ball, from when we're 5 years old. And then when you get to college, it's just kind of natural. You don't really realize that we're kind of crazy about our teams over here. If you watch like an NFL game and look at the fans, it's no secret. Like the Raiders fans are some of the craziest people you've ever seen in your life, and they're awful. The team's terrible. They never win, but they're still just insane about it. So I think it's just kind of like just the culture here. And it's a lot of fun. It makes, it just adds so many layers of fun to the sport that you don't typically see. And that's why I'm so excited about the ISL, and watching that grow and watching the team aspect of swimming kind of come into fruition, outside of just being, an American with the flag on your cap. Now you have like a team logo and a jersey and stuff. It's going to be pretty cool.
It almost feels like they've taken the model of like dual meets and stuff like that, and the identity that you have with that, and kind of said, well, let's take every swim around the world and do that, and actually get rid of it almost feels like country versus country, like political war in some events that you go to where there is these countries. But now with this, people don't care. Like, you just like, doesn't matter. We're there for the Raw, or we're there for the Condors, or whoever it is. And actually, it's brought a whole new aspect to it. And you can tell, talking to quite a few of them since they've come back, they're enjoying it. They're having a great time.
Yeah, and it's also fun to make money. That's a part of the sport that has just kind of unfortunately been ignored for a really long time. We've just branded ourselves as a non-revenue sport and just kind of, let it sit, which is a bummer. And it's really interesting and sad to watch how many colleges are just deciding that the pandemic is an excuse to cut their teams. And obviously each program has, different layers of, complexities to, keeping non-revenue sports around. But hopefully it's kind of a wake-up call to, instead of just being a non-revenue generating sport, maybe we should put some attention towards generating at least enough revenue to keep the sport alive. And I think, the ISL is the first step in that. There's a reason that kids are playing basketball from such a young age and so intense about making the NBA. When you watch LeBron James sign $100 million sneaker deal, it's exciting. So hopefully watching, Caleb Dressel and Katie Ledecky and, Lily King and all these people sign these big deals and, kind of trickles all the way down to not just those top three now, the top 200, 300 swimmers in the world can make money and make a living off the sport and not have to work a side job and be an Olympic athlete, which is how it used to be, because Lochte and Phelps were the only two people making money in the sport. It's interesting. It's exciting. And I think there's kind of going to be a lag now of people watching Dressel and Ledecky and, all these people start to really, make money and turn it into a career, get excited about the sport and see it as more of an opportunity to make money and make a living, having fun in swimming. So It's interesting. It's exciting. And I hope we really latch onto it and start to flip the mindset of swimming never being able to make money into, swimming could make at least enough money to stay alive.
For sure. So I guess talking a little bit there about future careers and those sorts of things for you, you've obviously transitioned into the various things you're doing now, but probably a lot of the lessons you've learned across kind of your swimming career at all levels, you've taken with you. Because one of the things I see when I talk to a lot of retired swimmers is actually I find out what role they're in, and you think, wow, your skill set that you've developed is perfectly suited for that. And from an employer point of view, they look at them and go, they're hardworking, they're really motivated, they're team orientated and those sorts of things. Do you think quite a few things you've taken across have helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. We touched on the fact that the transition's hard and it's weird. But there are definitely aspects of swimming that transition really well into your professional life. We are definitely geared to, be really physically focused and, switching into like how a lot of like my work is right here on the computer now is weird. But at the same time, waking up at 7:30 is not a big deal. It's pretty nice. People think you're a morning person when in reality, I'm waking up 2 hours later. I'm sleeping in. And just the idea of, how hard you work, you get rewarded monetarily and in a lifestyle way is definitely exciting, because we come from if I go a best time, in reality, the only person that's really, really excited about that is you. You don't really get a lot of resources from it. It's fun. But the hard working aspect of it is great. And then, it just looks good on a resume to have gone so far, and especially in such a brutal sport. We'll be honest about it. It's brutal. Your head's in the water. You're not really talking to anybody. It's you, yourself, and you. It's definitely a nice little resume builder as well.
And then what about, I guess, as like a peer group, because it's such a tight-knit group of people, but actually the sport itself, because you meet people in, for example, high school who then go off, all over the States or all over the world. to their different potentially college programs, and then actually you all end up in life, business, careers, whatever it is, and actually it forms like a professional network around the world where you think, oh my God, you're doing that and I'm doing that, let's work together on this. And you almost feel like the swimming fraternity moves into the professional world and continues, but in a slightly different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish everyone could see how tight-knit swimming is from my perspective. The amount of connections that I've made with people that I've never met before is insane. I mean, it's kind of hard to like put into perspective, but I mean, the swimming community is so tight-knit, and we all have, you know, kind of the same self-deprecating sense of humor, just because swimming is, like I touched on a minute ago, it's brutal. You don't really talk to anybody. You get 10 seconds on the wall to catch your breath and maybe say 2 words, and your conversations are all fragmented over the course of an hour. You have a conversation on the wall that probably could have taken 2 minutes if we were just sitting here like this. You all kind of have the same struggles, and, you know, you like to laugh about it and look back at it. And so, I mean, that network, I mean, just looking at my Twitter and the people that I talk to on there is awesome. And I mean, everybody's kind of got that. And so your friend group, I mean, it's interesting to watch it change over the course of your life. You know, when you're in middle school, you're like, we're going to be friends for life. And then you move into high school and you don't talk to those people anymore, but you have high school friends now, and you're like, we're going to be friends for life. And then you move into college, and there is definitely an aspect of college where you have a group of people that you'll be friends with forever, through alumni events and, you know, just going through all the stuff that you went through together in college. There's definitely a bond there that's much deeper than high school and middle school. But then you kind of go on into your careers, and then you meet another group of people, and you end up being friends with, you know, one guy from high school, a guy from college that lives in the same town as you, some people that weren't even athletes. And it's fun to watch that kind of, you know, looking back, you know, maybe I'm in a stage right now where I'm like, we're going to be friends for life. And then in 20 years, I'm going to have a whole new set of friends. I think I'm kind of getting to the point where the set of friends, like really close friends that I have right now, are definitely going to be, you know, my long-term, like lifetime friends, paired with a lot of people from college and, you know, a few people from high school. My roommate, I met when I was 12. So I'm kind of putting my foot in my mouth saying, you know, we're not going to be friends for life, but that one just kind of came full circle, and he was a swimmer. So we can kind of, you know, talk down about the sport in a fun way to each other. And I mean, it's interesting. You just kind of progress in a weird way that you always think that you know where you're at and where you're going, but you never do. And swimming will follow you no matter what throughout your life if you let it. And I mean, even now when I'm swimming in like the YMCA pool or my gym pool, you know, I'll meet people that swam at Cal in like 1960. I'll meet people that swam, a ton of people that swam at University of Texas, because I'm in Austin, that swam at, you know, UT in the 1990s. I'll meet people that follow me on Twitter. And so, I mean, it's just such a tight-knit group, and everybody has the same set of problems and can just talk so fluidly immediately about all of those problems as if we've been friends for 30 years. But I think it's the same way in a lot of other sports. I'm sure football players meet each other down the line, and they immediately start talking about tackling drills when they were in 8th grade, and they just immediately level like that. And that's just such a cool thing about sports, that people kind of glass over when they're looking at it, you know, from 10,000 feet. Is like, I mean, the ability to just stop and sit on the side of a pool with someone that I've never met, as 2 full-grown adults that are just trying to navigate staying healthy, and just talk about, you know, what it was like when, you know, I was 18 swimming at Arizona State, and when they were 18 swimming at USC, and, you know, in 2 totally different time frames, talking about the practices that they did. And I'm like, what? I can't believe you did that. And they're like, I can't believe I did that either. Is really fun.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned earlier about, you know, potentially getting into some like masters swimming, and one of the hallmarks, and I guess it's kind of almost going against perhaps the more traditional view of like masters swimming. It's a good laugh. You know, you turn up with people that are from all over the place. You know, I went to the Worlds 4 years ago now, and was meeting people who were medaling at like Olympics or Worlds in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, who then come back into it when their kids are swimming just to keep fit and healthy. And they have got all these stories to share. And it's such a vibrant place to be, because ultimately you've all got a love for the sport, but you've all probably been on your own journeys. So it's kind of like a really lovely organic environment where everyone's like, they love it.
Yeah. And I mean, swimming post college is weird. And I mean, I would love to tell all the college kids right now that you're not going to have it figured out. I know they're not going to listen, and I know in 3 years post college they're going to know that I'm right. But my relationship with the sport when I was done wasn't great, and I took, I want to say like 9 or 10 months off. And then I just decided one day that I was going to get back into it. Really different body type. And in the last race that I swam, I was at Pac-12, and I went, I think, 4 best times in one race. It was in the 200 breaststroke. I went a best time in the 50, 100, 150, and 200, all in one race. And then that was it for me. And I mean, granted, I didn't really swim the 50 or the 100, and the 150 is not a real race, but 4 best times. I'm gonna check that box. And then I get back in the pool at like kind of like a dark gym pool. I had been swimming outside at ASU, awesome facilities, being coached by Bob Bowman, and like the peak of my physical existence. And I get in and I swim a 25, like easy freestyle, and I just got out. I was done, because my brain was just so messed up with like, what just happened? Who have I become? I got out and then didn't swim for another year. And now finally have gotten to the point where I'm like, I need to throw away all of the expectations that I used to have and just train totally differently. And it's a hard place to get to, because swimming is so data-based. I mean, I remember every split from a workout I did when I was 16. I remember exactly what I used to go on test sets in short course meters pools back when I was 17, which is weird because we swim in yards. I trained all short course meters, but I remember exactly what I went in pretty much every race in practice. And then now you get in and you have that clock staring at you, and it sounds easy to just not look at it, but you look at it and you know what you're going, you know how slow you are and how fat you got, and it gets in your head. And then, you know, you just kind of have to throw that all out the window. And then it's pretty fun to watch. I mean, I'm still pretty fast in a 50 breast. I'm not in great shape. You know, I'm definitely a lot heavier. I'm not 2% body fat anymore, but I'm also a lot stronger. And it's kind of funny to like laugh at your previous self and go, this fat kid is just as fast as you were in a 50 breast. But it's all about finding fun in it. And I mean, you touched on it with the masters aspect of like being able to laugh with each other. I know some people that medaled in like the 1980s that are super out of shape now, but love swimming. You know, they're nowhere near what they used to be, obviously. I mean, they're in their 50s now, but I mean, watching them just kind of swim and just deal with not being that good anymore, or at that level of you know, athleticism, is actually kind of what inspired me to kind of compartmentalize what I used to do and just get in and swim and just form a different relationship with the sport than I used to have. So definitely looking forward to getting into some masters swimming, swimming like the 50 breast and the 50 free only instead of the 400 IM, and just seeing if I can, you know, beat my 22-year-old 3% body fat self.
Game on then. Just kind of pulling all this together and looking forwards for you. We've obviously talked there about, you know, health and fitness and the relationship with the water changing from a choice point of view and hobbies, but actually from like a work point of view, now you've kind of got to a point where you're comfortable with where you are and perhaps kind of found that direction. What is ahead for you? What have you got any aspirations, particularly in one area, or, you know, what does the next few years look like in terms of projects you're involved in?
Yeah. So I've bounced around a bit, and I'm, you know, kind of doing a lot of different things. I touched on it earlier. I'm doing a little bit of swimming commentary, which is awesome. I'm definitely aware that it's not a role that everybody can just kind of jump into, and you know, Twitter and kind of like the media roles that I've been involved with have definitely opened some doors in that avenue. And it's a lot of fun to be able to put on a headset and just not even really have to think about it. you just kind of forget the mic is there. And if you've got a good co-pilot, on air with you, before you know it, the session's over and you don't even realize what you were saying. You're just watching swimming and not talking to yourself in your head. You're talking in a mic to how many thousand people, which is weird. You definitely kind of click into that when you're on air. You're like, well, man, there's a lot of people listening. But I mean, that's a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, marketing is definitely something that I've just been aware of, how to do it, how to build an audience, how to talk to people for a long time. And that's kind of gotten me down the path of, I'm working with Pure Jerky now, which is a really good beef jerky company. I'm really biased. But I mean, it's weird. It's like a snack, but a meal at the same time. It like almost tastes too good to be a snack. You almost feel guilty. And being able to work with a product like that. And that's, I mean, if I was going to give one piece of advice for starting your career, work with a company and a product that you would buy yourself. There's nothing worse than trying to sell something that you don't feel passionate about. And that, like, I mean, maybe even doesn't work. And it's easy to fall into a rut of, just collecting a check. And I mean, there's a part of that that's important. You need to be able to pay your bills. But if you can find yourself working for a company that you would buy the product yourself, like Pure, I mean, it's a game changer. I'll find myself brainstorming ideas like in the shower, when I'm swimming, when I'm, doing cardio at the gym, just because I'm trying to figure out how to make more people taste this jerky, because like I said, I feel guilty eating as a snack. It's like eating a dried filet mignon. And I mean, if you find that niche where you're excited about the product, work starts to become not work. I forget who it was, but I was listening to a podcast the other day and they played a quote by one of the 10, 15 richest people in the world. And they were just talking about how, and you have to kind of take what they say with a grain of salt because they're super rich and they live different lifestyles. But if you can make 50% of work fun and enjoyable, I mean, you can suck it up and do 50% that you don't enjoy. I did the same thing. I hated threshold. I hated butterfly, but I was a 400 IMer and I needed to swim the first 100 of my 400 IM at least decently and not be so far behind that I couldn't catch up. And I needed to do that threshold work so that my 100 free at the end of it would be pretty good. The middle of it was definitely where I thrived and I enjoyed, like, backstroke threshold was my jam. It was not a great 200 backstroker. I was okay. But if there was like 8 200s backstroke descending 1 to 4 twice was an event, I would crush it. I mean, that was just what I did. Same thing with 400 IMs. But I mean, there are aspects of swimming that, I hated. But there are aspects of it that were just awesome. And it's the same thing with work. If you can figure out how to enjoy a lot of what you do at a company where you would buy the product, I mean, I'll work any role. I would, I mean, it's hard. I mean, because sometimes you have to work roles that you don't enjoy to make ends meet. It's just a fact of life and it sucks, but it's part of it. We need shelter and food. And sometimes working a job you don't enjoy can get you to the point where you have more freedom to go find a job that you really enjoy. Some people don't know what they're going to enjoy and they need to work 10 different jobs, which I kind of did for a while at the beginning of my career to find out what it was that I really did like. But I mean, opening up that freedom to where you can find a product that you would eat or buy yourself, and then figure out a role that you enjoy doing at that company. And then just kind of structure your life to where it doesn't feel like you're doing work. I mean, it opens up so many different avenues for your life to be awesome and just a lot of fun. It makes working out more fun. It makes eating more fun. It makes you want to figure out how to have more energy throughout the day so that you can work more. You find yourself working until 2 a.m. and you're like, geez, I need to go to bed. But not because I have 5:30 a.m. practice tomorrow, but because I want to work out and then get back into work. It's a balance that not a lot of people can find, but I mean, we were chasing best times. And I think, once you move into your professional career, chase a company that you like with people that you like, and then find a role that you like. And, there's the cliche, you'll never work a day in your life. You'll still work. There's still stuff that sucks. But trying to find that balance is super important.
Well, usually I round off the interviews by asking, what's that kind of one golden rule that you live by? But I think you've kind of summarised and broken that down nicely. So, Kyle, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to following your journey over the coming months and years to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I probably think I know where I'm headed, but I'm going to find out one way or another.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks there, Kyle, for such honest insights and some nice takeaway messages. You can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Sockwell and check out Pure Jerky Co., the links to which are in the show notes. I really like Kyle's outlook on sport and keeping it light and enjoyable along the way. This message translates nicely into the working world, where things can often get far too serious. That wraps up episode 31 of the show, and we move on to our finale next week to season 4. We are speaking with Apollo Echino, director, surfer, and star of the amazing Amazon Prime documentary, Surfing the South Island of New Zealand in Winter. She's also got an incredible YouTube channel, and we've included a link to her epic adventure, A Woman's Guide to the World, from Antarctica to the Amazon, in the show notes. So please make sure you check that out before next week's show. Thanks for joining us for the Rogue Monkey podcast, and have a wonderful week.